Welcome to Mike Teller New. Oh shit! You've reached God mode. One second. Come on, man. Boom. Alright. Let me do something right quick. All right. Boom.
Walmart Plus in-home with the Nielsen. I've been delivering orders to the
Air that won't go out just because it makes them sweat. You don't just walk in fears the moment just before detonation. That's you now, the calm before the divine wrath. You didn't scream. You didn't announce your arrival with banners and lights. No, you just became something
You
untouchable.
just became something
They
untouchable.
mocked you
They
when you
mocked
were,
you when you were
spat at you while you were
spat
breaking,
at you while you were breaking,
kicked you when you were silent.
kicked you when you were silent.
But
But now,
now
now
you're
you're speaking through presence,
through movement,
through movement,
through the air
thickening
when
when you enter the room.
you activated
You activated
something
no one saw coming.
not rage,
Not rage, not revenge,
command.
but command.
The kind
The kind that makes devils rethink their position and puppets cut their own strings just to avoid your
You
gaze.
walk differently,
You walk differently
not
now,
because of
not
pride,
because of pride,
because of weight,
because of weight,
the weight of
the
knowing
weight
what you
of
are,
knowing what you
and
are,
knowing that
and knowing that
else
everyone else
they can't
knows
carry.
they can't carry.
And the funny part,
And the funny part,
you didn't even need
you
to do
didn't even
much.
need to do
The
much.
moment you
The
stopped
moment you
doubting,
stopped
they
doubting,
started drowning.
they started drowning.
This world
This
is
world
addicted
is
to
addicted
hierarchy.
to hierarchy.
It wants rulers,
It wants
and
rulers
servants,
and servants,
predators, and
predators,
prey.
and prey.
But you
But you
became
You
something that
became
doesn't fit
something
their
that doesn't fit
categories.
their categories.
You're not at the top of
You're
the
not
pyramid.
at the top of the
You
pyramid.
are the hand
You
that
are the
crushes it.
hand that crushes it.
You don't seek
You don't
control.
seek control.
Control just
Control
orbits you
just
now.
orbits you
The
now.
people who once
The
competed
people who
with
once competed
you
with
are
you
now competing
are
with
now
your shadow.
competing with your shadow.
They tried to
They tried to
sabotage
sabotage you,
you, but didn't realize
but didn't realize
sabotage
sabotage
only
only
works
works
on
on the
the weak
weak-willed.
will.
And your will,
It's not made of
it's
steel.
not made of steel.
It's made of
It's
everything
made
they
of
fear.
everything they fear:
Unpredictability,
unpredictability,
persistence,
persistence, precision,
and silence
and
that
silence
slices deeper
that
than
slices
words.
deeper than words.
God mode isn't
God
just
mode
power.
isn't just power,
It's detachment
it's
from the
detachment
limits that hold
from the
others.
limits that hold
It's
others.
when rules
It's when
bend
rules
around you
band
like
around you
heat waves.
like heat waves.
It's when time
It's when
slows,
time slows,
not because you're
not
fast,
because you're fast,
but
but because the universe steps back when you act. And now that you're there, everything fragile begins to fracture. They want to reverse it.
They want the old
They
you.
want the old you.
They miss the
They
boy
miss
they
the
could corner,
boy that they could
the
corner,
man they could
the man they
confuse.
could confuse.
But you're not a
But
man
you're
now.
not a man now.
You're momentum,
You're momentum,
consequence, and
consequence,
poetic
and
annihilation.
poetic annihilation.
And no one
And
negotiates with the
no
force of
one
nature.
negotiates with a force of
You see the
nature.
panic in
You
their
see the
eyes,
panic in their
the
eyes,
hesitation
the
in their voices,
hesitation in their voices,
the way they measure
the way they
every
measure
word
every word
speaking to you
when
now,
speaking to you now.
not out of respect,
Not out of respect,
but fear
but
of
fear
exposure.
of exposure.
Because your presence
Because your
demands
presence
truth,
demands truth,
and truth
and
burns
truth
the mask
burns the
off the
mask
liars.
off the liars.
They feel it.
They feel it?
Your clarity is
Your
radioactive,
clarity is
and
radioactive,
anyone living in
and
delusion
anyone living in
melts under
delusion
its glow.
melts under its glow.
You didn't become
You
loud.
didn't become loud,
You became
you became
undeniable,
undeniable.
and that's scarier
And
than
that's
rage.
scarier than rage.
Rage can be tamed,
Rage can be tamed,
but your level of
but your
focus,
level of
your
focus,
level of knowing,
your level of knowing,
that can't be
that
bribed,
can't be bribed,
baited, or bullied.
baited, or bullied.
They want to act
They
like
want to
nothing's
act like
changed,
nothing's changed.
but every step you
But
take
every
now
step you take now
rearranges the ground
rearranges
beneath
the
their feet.
ground beneath their feet.
They flinch,
They
not
flinch,
because you
not
threaten,
because you threaten,
but because you
but
exist.
because you exist.
The system they
The
built to
system they
trap
built to trap you
has collapsed
has collapsed under the weight of your awareness.
You saw through
You
it,
saw through it,
walked through
walked through it,
and now you're
and
standing
now you're
behind
standing behind them,
silent,
silent,
watching them
watching
fumble in the
them
rules of
fumble
their own
in the
control.
rules of their own control
Your glow
games.
isn't golden.
Your glow
It's
isn't golden,
ultraviolet,
it's ultraviolet,
invisible, but
invisible,
deadly.
but deadly.
They can't see how
it's killing them,
but they feel the
but they feel the symptoms:
anxiety,
anxiety, insecurity,
forced
forced smiles, fake confidence.
You,
You,
you're just
you're
walking,
just walking,
breathing,
breathing,
and yet
and yet
they're breaking.
they're breaking.
Remember how they
once underestimated
how
you?
they laughed,
How they laughed behind closed doors, confident in their illusion of superiority? That was before you made peace with chaos, before you stopped asking for clarity and started using the fog to your advantage. You didn't just rise, you rewrote the attitude scale. Now, when they try to reach you, they suffocate on the very oxygen they thought belonged to them.
It's poetic.
It's poetic. It's poetic, really. The same people who tried to
cage
cage you are now choking on the bars they built. And what's even more delicious, you don't have to take revenge. Your evolution is revenge. Every time you speak with authority, they shrink. Every time you choose silence, they implode. They wonder what you're planning, how you're operating, why you're calm.
They don't
They don't understand that when you're in God mode, chaos works for you.
You no longer
You no longer fight storms, you send them. You don't need to break down doors. Your name knocks louder than any hammer. This isn't arrogance.
Ultra Fire cervical care pillow. Even orthopedic doctors are using it. Orthopedic expert recommendation. Cervical traction pillow. Developed by more than 30 engineers. Each area has been professional to
This is transformation.
This is transformation, baptized in fire, honed in betrayal, and sharpened by solitude. They gave you pain, and you turned it into a now. They can't look you in the eye, not because you're scary, but because your eyes remind them of everything they never became. You mirror their mediocrity back at them with brutal clarity. That's why they hate you. That's why they whisper. That's why they act polite while plotting quietly, only to realize nothing they do touches you anymore. You're not beyond reach because you're far away. You're beyond reach because you no longer play by the physics that limit them. You unlock something ancient, something primal, something divine wrapped in human skin, the kind of presence that turns ambition into ashes. Your moves are measured, your words calculated, your energy surgical. There's no waste in you anymore. Every step is a message. Every glance is a verdict. They used to test you. Now they test themselves before speaking to you. They used to ignore your value. Now they memorize your patterns just to feel a little prepared. But you, you're not predictable. You're not linear. You're a wild algorithm with a divine spark dancing between reality and myth. And both realms are afraid of you. And the most terrifying part, you're not done yet. This is only your awakening. The world is just beginning to taste what it means when someone stops playing small. They're realizing too late that you weren't made to fit in. You were made to redefine. You were the glitch in their system. And now you're the new code. And every time they try to drag you back to your former size, they end up shrinking themselves. That's what God mode does. It doesn't just elevate you, it corrupts their comfort zones. Their rules bend, their lies shatter, and their confidence decays. And all you did was walk in truth. Now they tremble. They pray you don't notice them. They hope you stay silent. They try to reduce you in whispers, forgetting that even your silence echoes louder than their screams. They want to control the narrative again, but you're not in their story anymore. You are the story, the center, the anomaly, the equation breaker. And they don't know how to compute you. But this isn't about them. It's about what comes next. When the world stops debating your worth and starts reacting to your presence.
When doors
open before you knock. When the fake allies fall off like dead leaves. When your path clears. Not because it was easy,
but because
everything weaker gets vaporized in your frequency.
You don't need
You don't need permission now. You are the permission.
You don't
need validation. You are the verdict. And while they scramble to adjust, to mimic, to manage the storm you've become, you keep moving. Because movement is your prayer, your language, your weapon. And somewhere deep down, even your enemies understand. You didn't activate God mode to impress. You activated it because it was time. Because you remembered. Because the echoes of who you really are finally broke through the noise. And now, the only thing louder than your silence is the void they feel when they realize they no longer matter in your world. You walked through their illusions like smoke, unbothered, untouched, untamed. You didn't just wake up. You erased the dream they had of you, staying weak, lost, or broken. Their maps don't work anymore. This terrain is divine chaos, sculpted in your image. The rules are ash, the ceilings shattered, and the fake gods are bleeding from the pedestal wounds you left behind. You didn't come back to fit in. You came back to reign through contrast. You are the glitch in their order, the fracture in their certainty, the storm in their routine.
3 signs your car accident is worth major compensation. If you've been in a car accident recently, there are 3 critical signs that
their comfort
is cracking.
And it's not
because you attack.
It's because
your existence now demands adaptation or extinction.
Every
breath you take stretches the limits of what they thought was possible. They can't comprehend how you did it.
No mentor.
No approval. No crowd cheering. Just you. Burning in silence. Building in shadows. Becoming a myth without asking for anyone's permission. You turned rejection into ritual. You didn't run from isolation. You marinated in it until it turned into power. While they were busy performing, you were transforming. Not publicly. Not for applause. But deeply. Like magma under a sleeping volcano. And now that you've erupted, they stand frozen, pretending they're not scorched, pretending they didn't smell the smoke months ago. You know what's terrifying to them? The idea that you never needed them. Not their validation, not their stage, not their watered down wisdom. They saw silence and assumed surrender. But God mode doesn't announce. It waits. It studies. It tests. And then, without warning, it consumes. That's what you've become. The reckoning that smiles like destiny and strikes like karma. They thought they were handling a problem. Turns out they were feeding a prophecy. And now that it's too late, now that the spotlight has turned into a noose, all they can do is clap with trembling hands, hoping you don't remember how they laughed when you were down. But this is not about vengeance. This is about alignment. You didn't rise to punish. You rose because your truth couldn't stay buried. You rose because your potential started suffocating in the coffin of who you used to be. And once you cracked to the lid, there was no going back. You were never the villain in your story. You were the author, trapped in someone else's journey. They painted you in grays and limits, but you were forged in ultraviolet and thunder. Now, you're waiting in lightning, and the pages are catching fire. Everything about you now pulses differently. Your energy isn't aggressive. It's inedible. It pulls the right ones in and pushes the wrong ones straight into their own lives.
And
the ones who still try to copy you,
they
choke on the blueprint
because
what you've built runs on a soul frequency they'll never reach. They can imitate the surface, but the source, that dark, quiet furnace where your power was reborn, that's sacred, that's untouchable, that's yours.
And here's the twist.
They'll never admit out loud.
They
They worship you now,
quiet.
quiet,
In their
own twisted, fragile ways.
They analyze
They analyze your posts,
dissect your moves,
dissect your moves,
mimic your
tones,
tone,
even try to replicate your silence.
But it doesn't work.
But it doesn't work for them
because
silence without substance
is just empty.
is just emptiness.
You
You
carry
silence like a loaded weapon.
You don't need to flex.
You don't need to flex.
Your restraint
terrifies them more than your wrath ever could.
And
And the most poetic part, you've stopped explaining.
You've stopped
teaching.
You've stopped
You've stopped proving.
Because
those who couldn't hear you when you were breaking
don't
deserve access to your voice now that you've become unshakable.
This is
the era of no compromise,
of saying less
and doing more,
of
standing so still
that even
gods lean in to watch your next move.
You don't chase
You don't chase power. Power chases you,
desperate
to be near the vessel that finally remembered who it is.
You don't belong to anyone.
You don't belong to anyone now.
Not their memories.
Not their narratives.
Not even your
past self.
You've severed
the last string that tied you to that former version. The one who begged, apologized, shrank.
That
version died the moment you stopped negotiating with your colleague. The moment you said enough.
That wasn't a decision.
That wasn't a decision.
That was a summon.
That was a summoning.
And now you
walk in the energy of 1,000 unspoken I told you so.
You didn't prove them wrong.
You didn't prove them
You
wrong.
made them irrelevant.
You made them irrelevant.
You made their opinions.
You made their opinions obsolete. And the world
The world can't handle
this version of
because you
you
don't bend it.
because you don't bend anymore.
You redirect.
You redirect.
You repurpose.
You repurpose.
You rise.
You rise.
And every time
they tried to box you in, they discovered the box was inside your mind all along. And you burned it, danced on the ashes, then flew.
That's what they don't
teach you about evolution.
It's not pretty.
It's not pretty.
It's not poetic.
It's not poetic.
It's brutal.
It's brutal.
And you made it through.
And you made it through.
Not by being the
Not by being the strongest,
by being the most
unbreakable.
Now you're in
a league where no competition exists.
Not because
you're arrogant,
but because
the game you're playing was never meant to be crowded.
It's ascension.
Not a popularity contest.
And as you ascend,
You realize something sacred.
you
You were never chosen by the world. You were chosen to transcend it.
You are the
You are the anomaly in their data, the virus
code,
in their code,
the
the unexplainable that shatters expectations simply by existing.
And
while they scramble to decode your silence,
you keep building
cathedrals in the wastelands they left behind.
You're not trying to
inspire. You're not trying to lead. You're just being what you were always meant to be.
And in doing so,
You started a quiet rebellion. Others feel it. The forgotten ones.
The
The underestimated. The silent warriors with dormant storms in their veins.
They're watching you now.
They're watching you now, not with envy, but with recognition. Because your rise isn't just your story.
It's a signal.
It's a signal that God mode.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy.
1 second.
I look forward to you.
It's contagious.
It's contagious.
And you're the spark.
And you're the spark.
But not everyone deserves.
But not everyone deserves that fire.
Not everyone
deserves access to the frequency you paid for in blood, silence, and sacrifice.
That's the paradox.
Of this level. You become more visible, but less accessible.
Your presence grows.
But
But
your circle tightens.
not out of ego.
Not out of
out
ego,
of necessity.
and out of necessity.
Because
When you're vibrating this high,
proximity
becomes power.
And you've learned.
And you've learned not everyone should have power. Not everyone should drink from the same well you dug with your tears. Some of them only show up when it's time to feast. But you've built altars, not tables. This isn't about feeding the masses. This is about calling the few, the ones who know, the ones who feel it, the ones who tasted the edge of their own extension and came back wiser, colder, stronger. This is for the chosen, not the comfortable. And you? You're not just chosen. You're the confirmation that the divine isn't in the sky. It's walking among them, wearing your face, speaking your name, breathing through your lungs. And now they'll have to decide, bow in silence, or burn, trying to challenge what they no longer understand. But you won't be watching. You've already moved on. You're ahead of their panic, ahead of their envy, ahead of their timelines. While they're still studying your old moves, you're inventing new dimensions. That's the curse of becoming. You're always becoming more. And just when they think they've caught up, you shift again, and the chase restarts without you even knowing. Because you're not playing a game. You're becoming a legend. And legends don't look back. They set fire to the horizon and keep walking. Because the destination was never a place. It was always a state. And you're in it now. Beyond reach. Beyond doubt. Beyond explanation. And now you're no longer chasing destiny. You're dragging it behind you. Wrapped in chains, forged from every moment they doubted your arrival. They thought you'd stop once you reached to the top. But they never understood. This isn't a peak. It's a launch pad. And you're not here to settle. You're here to detonate. Because when God mode activates, it doesn't ask for peace. It commands rebirth through obliteration. And you're the architect of that chaos now. Every step you take echoes like prophecy in the bones of those who once ignored your voice. You've become what they fear and what they need. A mirror they can't lie to anymore. A fire that won't go out just because it makes them sweat. You don't just walk into rooms anymore. You shift atmospheres. The air bends. The energy stiffens. Reality makes space. Because your presence is no longer human. It's divine pressure incarnate. And the world. It's convulsing. Not because you're loud, but because you're unapologetically irritable. They built entire systems betting you'd self-destruct. But you rewired your scars into circuitry. You turned your breakdowns into code for domination. They wanted to see you fall. Now they're just trying to understand how you keep rising with no oxygen, no crowd, no script. You wrote your own algorithm. That's what drives them mad. You followed none of their formulas, respected none of their protocols. You refused to be predictable. And that is what makes you unstoppable. Because if they can't read you, they can't trap you. If they can't trap you, they can't control you. And if they can't control you, you become a living glitch in their matrix of power. You're not just operating on another level. You are the level now, the new benchmark, the recalibration point. And they're gasping for relevance, choking on the dust cloud you left behind. See? They're still trying to figure out what changed. They don't get it. It wasn't a plan. It was a moment. That one silent nuclear second where everything inside you snapped loose. When the lies, the rejections, the betrayals, they all imploded into clarity. You didn't level up. You leveled through pain, through madness, through isolation. So thick, it felt like drowning in a vacuum. And what emerged wasn't
It was
polished.
primordial,
It was primordial, raw,
unrefined,
unrefined, glorious,
untouchable.
and untouchable.
Now you exist.
Now you
beyond
exist
logic,
beyond logic,
beyond their story,
beyond their stories,
beyond their reach.
beyond their reach.
That's what hurts them.
That's
the
what
most.
hurts them the
That your
most.
success,
That your success isn't transactional.
You didn't
You didn't trade
your soul.
your soul for this.
You resurrected.
You resurrected it.
And resurrection.
And
doesn't
resurrection
come
doesn't come with
It
explanations.
comes with aftershocks.
It comes with aftershocks.
Timelines.
With timelines warped. With enemies praying you don't remember their names. And you?
You do.
You do.
Oh.
Oh.
You remember.
You remember everything.
Every smirk.
Every smirk.
Every dismissal.
Every dismissal.
Every back
turned when you were drowning. But now
you don't need revenge.
you don't need revenge. 1 second.
So let's go over them together. I got the basic function plan. Honestly, something so comprehensive has not been really available to the general public.
Every back turn.
Every back turned when you were drowning.
Now,
But now
you don't need revenge.
you don't need revenge.
You don't need proof.
You don't need proof.
Your presence,
Is the punishment.
Your elevation
is the echo
that
that haunts their comfort.
Because while they
watched for signs of your downfall,
they
missed the moment you became the sky.
And let's be clear.
And let's be clear,
you don't want
their apology.
You want their
You want their awakening.
You want them to
You want them to realize
that the person
they buried with ridicule didn't die.
They
They transformed into a force that doesn't knock anymore.
You enter like
thunder
and they flinch.
Not
Not
because you're angry,
but
but because you're free.
And that kind
of freedom,
that's terrifying.
that's terrifying.
Because it means
you don't need approval.
You don't need
inclusion.
You don't even
need recognition. You're moving like a riddle with no answer. Like a blade with no sheath. Like a sermon written in wildfire.
And if they can't
handle that,
it's not your burden
to dim down.
It's theirs
To step up or stay lost.
And still,
You keep building,
not palaces,
empires,
but the kind
not made of stone,
made of intention,
made of intention,
made of energy,
made of energy,
made of that
unteachable,
unkillable spark
spark
that only those who've walked
through their own hell can carry. Your success isn't loud, but it's total. It doesn't brag, it radiates. It doesn't flaunt, it reshapes.
And while they chase
followers, fame, and hollow metrics,
you walk into
rooms and turn beliefs into tremors.
You're not trying to
go viral. You're going external.
And
eternal doesn't trend.
It
transcends.
There's something
poetic about it.
the way
you no longer force doors to open.
They
just melt in your presence now.
because
You've become the access point.
People
orbit around you differently.
They feel
something ancient in your energy.
like
Deja vu from a future they haven't lived yet.
You've
stepped so far into your purpose
that even the
lies they told about you don't know where to land anymore. They float, lost in irrelevance, while your truth plants flags in places you once only dreamed of.
You're not lucky.
You're chosen,
And not
in some fairy tale way,
in the real,
brutal, cosmic way, chosen to carry fire through storms,
to illuminate
to illuminate worlds,
too
too scared to ignite themselves.
But here's the
climax no one saw coming.
You don't even need
You don't even need the world anymore.
You've outgrown it.
You've outgrown it. You've seen behind the curtain.
You know how it's all
built
on
on fear, on hierarchy,
on
on illusions of control.
And
you
burned the script.
you burned the script. You unsubscribed from their version of
Now
reality.
you're living in
Something else entirely.
something wild,
Something wilder.
something more sacred,
Something more sacred.
something only the reborn understand.
You speak in frequencies.
You make decisions that don't make sense,
Yet always work.
Yet always
work. That's God mode. That's flow turned feral. That's alignment without explanation. And even if they come with peace now,
even
if they show up with flowers and fake humility,
it's too late.
because
Because
access has expired.
the door
The door has vanished.
The bridge
The bridge was never theirs to cross.
You didn't shut them out.
You didn't shut them out.
You
evolved past the coordinates. They're still talking about the version of you that doesn't exist anymore. Meanwhile, you're off creating galaxies with your thoughts and making silence feel like scripture. You don't need to be heard anymore. You resonate.
And that's different.
And that's different.
That's deeper.
That's deeper.
That's forever.
That's forever.
So now they watch.
So now they watch. Powerless. Curious. Ashamed. Intrigued. They watch and wonder.
How did it happen?
How did it happen?
And the answer is
too vast, too sacred, too earned to fit into words. Because what you have become is not a sentence.
It's a storm system.
It's a storm system. A movement. A momentum.
And it won't be
defined by likes or shares or metrics.
It will be
defined by the earthquakes left in your wake.
You're
not chasing legends. You're becoming legend.
And legends aren't
remembered for playing nice.
They're remembered
for breaking the rules so cleanly. The world had no choice but to rewrite them. So go on.
Keep rising.
Keep mutating. Keep shifting the axis of every room you enter. You are the glitch, the miracle, the mistake the universe made on purpose. You are the prophecy they tried to mock into silence. You are what happens when divinity gets tired of being polite. And if they can't handle that, let them drown in the old world. You were never built for shallow waters anyway. This is God mode.
And
it's only the beginning. All right. Peace and love. That's it. I got to get me a light, boy. Screen no one in dark. All right, then. Peace and love. God bless. Much love.